What is up, Cupcakes? It's your boy Paperback Dan, and I'm back with my good friend Connor, who's finally made his triumphant return. He's feeling well. Everything's gotten better over on his end. Connor, talk to the people.
Hi, it's great to be back. And yeah, I'm feeling much better than I was. I'm very excited to do this video. I'm excited to do a lot of talking in the next few weeks and get back to the way things were. We've got a lot of like comics to talk about, a lot of topics to talk about. And I'm looking forward to the one we're going to do right now. Um, yeah, it's great to be back. It's nice to be speaking to you again.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I'm super excited about this because it has been a while. I'm glad you're well. Glad to have you back. So we're gonna do things a little different today. It's kind of like an attempt to mix up the content that we're doing. We're hoping that we can make this like a series. I don't know. I'm not saying we're going to do it like weekly or monthly, like it won't be on a schedule, but I'm hoping that it's another segment that we can add to our repertoire, if you will. The name for the segment is still a work in progress, but we've talked about doing this before, both on and off camera, the two of us. Connor is going to try to sell me on reading Power Rangers. The time has come. We've talked about doing this little like pitch video before. Here we are. I have my trusty notepad. I've got some questions, and I'm just excited about this.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, we could really just title this "Sell Me on This."
I, I think that is what. But yeah, so got my notepad handy. We're gonna see if Connor can convince me to start reading Power Rangers, because all those times that he's picked it up on Wednesdays, it's like damn near his pick of the week. If it's not his actual pick of the week, he always raves about it without going into spoiler territory. So it always has me curious. So hopefully this video will help you decide if you want to read Power Rangers, if you're also on the fence about it. And since I obviously have not read this book before, or series, I guess, we're not going to talk spoilers. We're going to keep it as spoiler free as possible. This way, we're not ruining it for me or for you. So to kick things off, what I'm going to do is have a small little list of rapid fire questions. I'm going to do those first. Then we'll get a little bit more into the in-depth stuff. And to cap it off, we'll have like I don't know what to call, like an open mic type of thing, where if there's something that I didn't ask you about that you want to cover, you just kind of have free reign to take over. So I have my questions ready. Before I start, I want to say that Connor specifically asked me not to show him these questions. He wanted to be put on the spot. He likes to live on the edge, apparently. So with that said, I've got my rapid fire questions here. First things first, who publishes this book?
Boom Studios.
Next question, is it an ongoing series or is it finished?
Ongoing. There's
Okay.
a couple though.
Gotcha. So you said it's ongoing. Who is the current writer?
Ryan Parrott.
And what about the artist?
Oh no, that's confusing.
Okay,
I'm
so
not sure.
you said there's multiple series. So
Because there's two different series, there's two different artists.
are you able to name both of them?
No.
Okay, that's fine.
It's good. It's a great start.
That's fine. I mean, this is the result of you wanting to be put on the spot, but I think it's
Yeah, I
incredible.
know.
It's okay. Can you give us one artist? Do you know one of the two?
No. I will say that my favorite artist on this series has been Dan Mora. He did a part
Okay,
of the Power Rangers.
I'll say that. I mean, that's a good enough answer for me.
Yeah.
All right. So you said that it's ongoing. So at the time of this filming, what is the current issue? Or I guess since there's two series, if you want to give me the issue number for both of them.
13 for
Is that
both of
for
them.
Oh, they're both on 13. Okay, I mean, I guess that
Yeah,
helps if they're on the same number. I didn't know that.
both are like running concurrently. So like you get
Mhm.
one, and then the other one does a one, and then they kind of keep going, back and forward. So they kind of tie in with each other a little bit.
Okay, so you're saying like 13-ish vicinity. I
It's
know.
13-ish, yeah.
I say it's not the best time to ask you because you've been out of action for the last month.
That's the problem. I
I
definitely,
can't.
I definitely think it's 13.
I can't remember off the top of my. I think a new issue came out today, actually. So maybe it's
Yeah,
14.
yeah.
I definitely saw one on the rack, but because I'm not reading it yet, you have to sell me on it. I don't know what issue they're officially at.
Hmm.
What genre would you consider this book to fall under?
Oh, that's an interesting question. Um, I would actually say like thriller, because it's action heavy, but there's a fair amount of drama in it. So with that blending, you would probably say thriller, because the thriller is a bit of both.
Okay.
Um, I think like sci-fi as well. I'd say that like definitely in
Oh,
the sci-fi genre,
I,
there's a
I
lot.
mean, I definitely, yeah, sci-fi. I feel is
Yeah.
like a fairly
If we're
heavy.
going, if we're going like technical, it would be a tokusatsu genre. Like that would be the perfect description of it.
So, what is that for dopes like me who don't know what
So that's
tokusatsu is?
essentially like Sentai series. So that's like basically people in costumes that are taking on monsters of the week or whatever. So like if you're going like in regards to Japan, you would go like Kamen Rider, Ultraman, Super Sentai, which is the Japanese equivalent of Power Rangers. So over here we have Power Rangers. Over there they have Super Sentai.
Gotcha. Okay. So, last rapid fire question. It's specific to this series, based on the book alone, not any of the shows or anything like that. Favorite Power Ranger.
Jason from the
Okay.
original,
And he's which one?
the Red Ranger. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Cool. So rapid fire's out of the way. That was fairly painless, minus the artist part, but I always forget. So it's cool. I mean, honestly, if the roles were reversed, I probably would have forgotten it as well. So don't feel bad. Most people, you know, there's a like rare few artists that will sell a book versus writer. Anyway, I think.
Yeah.
So now this seems kind of obvious, I guess, but what is the book about? What is like if you were making an elevator pitch, how would you describe the book?
Um, Definitely a coming of age book. The thing is that it's interesting because it's a lot more layered than people would give it credit for because of the show. Uh, it definitely has a good group of characters, like young characters who are growing up in a difficult time in their lives. They've all got situations going on at home, and then they have to be essentially superheroes. So it's a classic superhero story. The difference with this is that it's more like obviously what they're taking on is more monsters, and there's obviously like a giant robot aspect of it. Um, the interesting thing is the twist. There's a lot of twists to like pre-existing lore, but essentially you are in it for seeing how these teenagers navigate um, difficult lives in regards to just everyday life and their superheroics.
So my next question for you is, well, so I have a question and then I guess I'll follow it up with another one. Is right now a good time to jump into the book?
Probably so. It depends on the format. If you wanted to read single issues, no. It would probably be too confusing. The good thing is though, if you're talking about trades, I definitely think like if you follow the trades, they're perfect jumping on points. Like the right at the beginning is the perfect point to jump on. There's no like you don't need to know anything.
Okay,
And
so my follow-up question then, sorry, was going to be what is the best starting point? So you're
ah
saying to just go the trade route.
yeah, because the deluxe editions I don't think are worth it. They're missing. they're missing basically the other. So there's two series running alongside each other from the beginning, and it's different to the two that are running right now. But I feel like the two of them, you get the most out of it if you read the two of them. If you read the deluxe editions and the deluxe editions alone, you will not get most of the series Go-Go Power Rangers. So you're missing a huge chunk. With the trades, you can dictate how you read and in what order you read. Um, and both again from like volume ones onwards, you're not missing anything. So I think the trades are 100% the best way to go about it. And yeah, I think that single issue wise, it's probably not worth it right now, just because it's at a pivotal moment where there's kind of the equivalent of an event going on, and it'd probably be too much to handle. Like, because I'd even dare say a Power Ranger fan probably would struggle to jump in at this point, single issue wise, because they flip so much lore in its head. But yeah, to answer your question, the trades are 100% the best way to go, and just start at number one
from the beginning. I mean, that always makes it simple. So that's good.
Yeah.
So what? Because I know how you feel about this series, like you've talked about it before in other videos. What do you love about it? Like, what aspect of this book caters to you that makes you enjoy it so much?
Basically, I was a fan of the show growing up, and I mean, probably for longer than I should have been. But then you do get aged out of it, and you feel like the show stopped aging. The show got stuck in the time. So originally Kyle Higgins wrote it, and then obviously Ryan Parrott's taken over with Marguerite Bennett doing a little run in the middle. The good thing about the comic is that it does really take the lore, flips on its head, but also it adds so many layers to these kids. It's the same 5 kids from the show. The 5 kids in the show, I think sometimes are surprisingly, it's overlooked how there's a bit of depth to them, but the comic goes even further. The comic, like, Kyle Higgins introduces, particularly off the top of my head, like Zach, the Black Ranger. There's like particular amount of layers added to the characters that make relationships far more complicated than you would expect. It adds a lot of stakes to like the battles. And the most fun thing that I love about it is it does things that the show never could. The show was restricted to the Sentai footage, so it had to basically follow that, and the episodes had to be pre-written, matched up to that. The comics don't have that, so it's not really a spoiler, but in the first issue, like when the Megazord is out, the Pink Ranger, she detaches from the chest of the Megazord and starts flying about. Even something as small as that was mind-blowing, because you could never get that in the show because it's a suit, and the show dictated how the show would look. So you would never get moments like that. So the Pink Ranger all of a sudden gets a chance to do something herself. That adds more characterization, that adds more layers, and it makes it more exciting. But the thing is that I think people misunderstand and overlook how much stakes there are in this book. I mean, there's so many series out there that, like, I think like Paper Girls and stuff, and like Morning Glories and all this, they all work with teenagers and like how they're feeling about school and stuff. And I know that they've got some like Morning Glories in particular has like a crazy concept and stuff. But Power Rangers is just so honest about how it speaks about its teenagers. And then every time you think because even if you've watched the show, every time you think you know what's about to happen, it does really just go in the other direction, and it keeps you on your toes. It actually reminds me of Invincible in a way, in how its story just kind of flows. It never feels forced. It never feels like it's twisting. It just feels like it's just going, but it still constantly surprises you. And like the other thing as well is, like, the show was dictated by like villain of the week's like format. The comic book doesn't follow that, so you will get the bigger stories that you always wanted. I mean, heck, I think Kyle Higgins' initial like 12 issues are just one big story, and then you get like a little bit of a break, or maybe not 12, but like between 8 and 12, there's like a break. But there's like a huge chunk of issues. I remember thinking, man, like there's not been a monster of the week in a while, and it allows for these kids to feel more, and you to see them in more dangerous situations. But in the long run, it means you support them more. So you're getting like really good art, you're getting really good story, but like it's dynamic. The action looks crazy cool, and the story's more serious. It's less cheesy, and the thing, it still has those Power Ranger moments. It still has them morphing. It still has them shouting some of their moves, and it still has like the Megazord forming. And one of the coolest things is seeing how artists depict the Megazord forming. They all do something different, and it's always really cool. But these cheesy aspects are still there, but because the actual drama of the kids is brought to a serious level, it stands out more as fun. So it really balances the book out overall. So, like for me, there's just so much to love about the book. There's so many comics and series I read right now where it's a bit uneven, like it's missing something. Power Rangers never feels like it's missing something. It feels like, one, it knows exactly what it is, but two, it knows exactly what it's missing, and it always injects it into that. And that's testament to the two writers that have really steered it right now. But you can tell the writers relish having this freedom. So, um, yeah, like it's just the informality of it. It never feels like the kids are just telling you how they're feeling. You can see how they're feeling, and like it's like these kids are in a dangerous situation. You'll know they're in a dangerous situation. It's not like they just fight it like in the show and then they get over it. Nah, if they're in a bad fight, you'll hear about it for the next couple issues and you'll see it. And then on top of that, something that was often a joke in the show is like, do the Rangers, even though they're kids, do they have parents? Because you never see their parents, and you do see their parents in the comics, and that adds more to the drama, and because there's real life stories applied to it, particularly Jason, I'm thinking of right now. They have real lives that they have to figure out. And the other aspect of it I really love is that with Power Rangers, when you watch the show, you always think like, oh, it's always in America. Like they're always fighting in America. They're always fighting in Angel Grove. In the comic, like it's more global. Like if a monster appears in Italy, they'll go to Italy and stuff. So like there's a bigger sense of scale. It feels like the world's in danger and not just the town in America. And then obviously you lead into like the first event they did, Shattered Grid, and that was on another level. That was huge, but it was still, you still felt the drama of it. You still felt like the emotion of it. So yeah, it's just a crazy epic coming of age story that never really knows how to stop and just constantly leaves you guessing. So like I can't recommend it enough.
That's very like informative and like a way different answer than I expected. But that's great. I do think for me personally that the free reign that these writers have with this book compared to the TV show, because most kids, like me and you, are the same age, so like most people in our age group and even further than that, like in either direction, like I feel like you haven't watched Power Rangers if you're like 10 or 80, but like everywhere in between you probably have. Like that's exaggerating, but like you know what I mean. So like everybody has some level of familiarity with Power Rangers. And I think you talking about how these writers aren't limited by like the Sentai film that they like were forced to write into, and how, like you said, they'll go to Italy instead of being stuck in Angel Grove or whatever. I do think that that's pretty awesome. I do think the fact that they're not limited by a budget for a TV show, or like being forced to use the same set 10 times over, etc. Like I think that helps. I think it definitely makes the book more compelling than the show altogether, potentially. And I mean, it's been a while since I've watched Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I'm not as well versed as other people probably would be, like you, for instance. but yeah, I think that that's a major highlight, and that to me, like you trying to sell the book to me, I think that is a big point, like in your favor, so to
Mhm.
speak. Because I like that. Like, was it Kimberly being able to take her part of the Zord and fly off and do something, like you said, that wouldn't have
Yeah,
happened otherwise. Like,
yeah.
anytime that you can take something that you know and like twist it and
Mhm.
spin it in a way that makes sense without going overboard is
Mhm.
something that I'm like super into.
The thing
Um,
is, the thing is
yeah,
like as well, like they break down stuff you've never really questioned. Like, I mean, when they turn into rangers, why do they all of a sudden know like kung fu? Why do they know these fighting moves? That's explained. You know, like these kids when they're in these ridiculous situations, how do they know how to deal with it? It's because they get training that you never see in the show, but the comic book covers their training and it can be brutal. And the lessons they learn can be brutal. And it really, again, this all continues to like build to paint a picture, and you really do feel these kids and where they're at, you know. And I never feel like it spits in the face of the show. If you like the show, you'll love the comic. The other thing as well I want to bring up is that the I feel like sometimes the show stops people from reading the comic. I brought up a few times that people have said, "Oh, Power Rangers, really?" or like, "Oh, but it can't be that good," or whatever. It is, and it's a shame that people won't look past the show to see it. If you're a fan of the show, and if you're not a fan of the show, I think equally you'd love it. Um,
so one, that's why we're doing this video.
yeah.
Uh, and two, so that what you kind of said ties into my next question,
Okay.
which I guess you technically already gave an answer to, but would you recommend it? Excuse me. Would you recommend it to comic fans, like comic book fan readers specifically, who didn't watch Power Rangers growing up, like who don't have that like nostalgic attachment to that franchise slash series slash whatever you want to call it?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's the amount of people I've spoken to that read comics and haven't read it blows my mind. I mean, the deluxe editions help because a lot of people like hardcovers, and then like people like Omar and Newman Conditions speak about it, and people go, "Oh, I like the look of that book," or somebody says something good and they go and read it. But I still am baffled by the amount of people that haven't read it. Um, the I recommend it because it's a good comic book. Like taking my bias aside because I clearly like it, it's a both writers. It's really well written, and it's done in a way in which you don't even need to know what happens in the show. There's actually an aspect, and I don't know because I don't know if you're going to ask a question about timeline or how what order to read them or whatever, but like they do a thing where you actually can watch parts of the show integrated into the comic. Now, personally speaking, I think the comic is more like a it's more like what the new Star Trek movies were to the old Star Trek. Like it's almost like a different. It's like an alternate timeline. But there's arcs of the show that you could just fit into the parts that are missing from the comic, and I think that's because they just think, well, the storylines are so famous. Why would we? Well, you can't do them better, so we'll just do that. Um, so like as someone that likes Power Rangers, you could go and do that. But as someone that doesn't like Power Rangers and just likes comic books, yeah, like you're gonna get awesome art. You're gonna get awesome like a really in-depth characters. You're gonna get an awesome story. And it doesn't matter if you've never picked up Power Rangers in your life. When you get to Shattered Grid, you're gonna be blown away by some of the moments in it. And then when you reach past that, you go into Ryan Parrott's run, Necessary Evil, it enhances it if you know. But if you don't know, you're still going to be excited because there's certain, particularly Ryan Parrott starts doing stuff that doesn't mess with pre-existing lore, but almost twists it and adds to it. So both someone that's never watched or heard or seen Power Rangers before and someone that has are both equally surprised by some of the twists it takes. There's one in particular that absolutely blew my mind, and I'm a fan, so someone that didn't will be equally blown away by it, you know. And it's exciting. It's always exciting.
Okay. So my follow-up question, I guess, because my original follow-up question was how important is like the knowledge of the show. Like for me, I feel like I'm a little bit lacking. Like
Yeah,
my memory of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers is very like limited. I think the thing that actually sticks out to me the most is the movie with
yeah,
Ivan Ooze. Because I couldn't really tell you too much about the original series at this point. Like I don't, my memory doesn't really like go back much further than like in space or
yeah,
anything
yeah.
like that, and that's like a few series after. Um, so you're saying that overall, the knowledge of Mighty Morphin, because that's where like the focus really is basically irrelevant.
Yeah,
Like you
I
don't
mean,
have to have had watched the show to understand what's going on.
yeah. I mean, if I'm discussing timeline, like, so the core series, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, that starts after the arc in the show Green with Evil. So that's introduced the character of Tommy as Green Ranger. It's just after that arc that the main series starts. You don't need to know that Green with Evil happened. You don't need to know what happened in it. Because they'll tell you, like, he was evil and he's good now. That's all you need to know from it. If you watch the arc, then you'll probably be more enhanced by it because you'll know exactly what happened. But it's not a deal breaker. You can just go in and go, "Oh, that happened," and then you move on because the storyline from point is built from that issue. They just talk like the pre. If you were to talk about that arc, that was a full stop for the previous part. The first issue is like the start of the new part, and because it's doing stuff and going in a direction that the show was never able to. You're almost on equal terms with someone that is a fan. The only difference is that they'll have more knowledge on certain characters and such, but they tell you that in the comic anyway. You'll know who a villain is and you'll know who a hero is. And the thing is that the layers they add to the characters are obviously done in comic because they don't expect you to have seen the show before. So when they add a layer to Zach or where they add a layer to Jason, that's the comic. The show has nothing to do with that. The only thing the show would maybe inform you of going in is what their archetype is, but that's it. But you'll get an idea of that in the first issue anyway. You know?
Okay. So my reverse question of the one that I just asked you, um, could someone who does not read comics like at all, but enjoys or did enjoy Power Rangers also get into this series? Like, do you think you would recommend it to someone who loves Power Rangers but aren't really into comics?
Yeah, absolutely. That is 100%. I'm actually aware of some people who have done that. This has brought them into comics. Um, but if they're a fan of Power Rangers and they've never read a comic book before, then yes, absolutely. I I don't even think that this series will just be the only one for someone like that. I think that this would be a gateway. And again, I'm aware to some people that it has been a gateway, but this is a good example to people who've never read a comic book of how good a comic can be, particularly if you're a fan and showing how good your stuff can be written. Because if I'm honest, if you're a fan of Power Rangers, you're probably a fan of something else in regards to like you're probably a Marvel movie fan or whatever. Um, and in that regard, this is 100% a great um, gateway. Um, if you're if you're not a fan of Power Rangers and you're not a comic book fan, I mean that definitely would be a bit more difficult, but I still recommend it. I think it obviously depends on your taste. Like if someone's into more brutal stuff, that'd be fair. But if you're pretty open to it, I think that again, the art is so good and the storyline just kind of kicks in and it's such a ground level story that it's a good starting point. It's a good place to build on. Um, so I would recommend it, but that one would depend on the person. That said, going back to what you had asked, if it was someone that was a fan of Power Rangers, absolutely, without a doubt, I'd actually say go there sooner than watching any of the new shows, or go there sooner than rewatching Mighty Morphin. I would just go to the comic book straight out.
Okay. So at this point, we're going off script because I ran out of actual questions that I wrote down.
I just
But
want to say quickly, right? I remembered one of the artists' name who's on Power Rangers right now is Marco Rana.
okay, see now you saved that segment.
A bit late, but yeah.
Hey, better late than never. So my next question is, so you're saying that Kyle Higgins, he's the one that like started this
Yeah.
run on Boom, right? Um, and you said that there are like multiple series. So for someone who is trying to get into it and say they go the trade route, like you're suggesting, what are the actual like titles that they should be looking to pick up?
So the two to focus on would be the core series in trade format would be Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And then the almost brother series, I would call it, is Go-Go Power Rangers. Um, Mighty Morphin, the core one's written by Kyle Higgins. And this is back then before he took over the whole kind of storyline. But Ryan Parrott wrote Go-Go. Now they take place at different points, and it's kind of interesting because if you're saying like you're looking at the show, right? Green with Evil's pretty early on, but that's when Tommy is kind of the evil Green Ranger, yeah. So if that's that arc, right? Mighty Morphin starts at after that arc, yeah.
Mhm.
Go-Go starts the second day they get their abilities and ends before right at the end of that arc. So if you collected them in the right way, you could just read it all the way through and watch Green with Evil in the middle. That said, I don't actually recommend that. It's just something you could do. Um, how I would do it is both tie into the Shattered Grid event. So what I would do is I would read Mighty Morphin up to the Shattered Grid point, and then Go-Go up to the Shattered Grid point, and it's almost like a flashback at that point about what's to come, and then read Shattered Grid with the two volumes together.
Okay. So
And
so eventually, if I'm understanding this correctly, eventually the titles kind of start to align a little bit more.
yeah, this is the only annoying thing, right? And because I'm going to be honest, because I am selling you on it, but I also want to make people aware of the con I found with the series. It's completely fine if you're reading it singles, but it's a nightmare. Not a nightmare. It's difficult to navigate, and that's why I think the trades are the best way of doing it, because you can probably figure out the best way of doing it that way. The deluxes are missing so much that it's the deluxes are just not worth it. Um, because what is as I've just described, the two of them kind of coincide with Shattered Grid, but one takes place at the beginning, one takes place like after Green with Evil. After Shattered Grid, Marguerite Bennett takes over the main title for I think 6 issues, and that run is kind of important for down the line. That's the only part. That 6 issues is the only part where I'd say that prior knowledge would be useful. After that, you're fine. But that 6 issues are a point where prior knowledge would probably be useful, because it brings it, because without spoiling, it brings a lot of characters that you kind of, it does enough to tell you who they are, but unlike the course like Rangers, they're only in it for this 6 issues, so you don't get much time to spend with them. And I think that Boom were going in a direction, and they decided actually this isn't the direction we want to go in, and then they brought Ryan Parrott on from Go-Go to do the whole thing. Yeah. Um. Now with post Shatter Grid, that happens. So you get that, and then Go-Go finishes basically the kids up to Green with Evil. Like it basically finishes off their prequel to the start of the series. And then once they kind of meet at that point, Ryan Parrott takes over both titles. And Ryan Parrott does a cool thing where again Go-Go is a prequel, but it's set after Shattered Grid, and Mighty Morphin, the main series, is set after White Light, which is the White Ranger storyline. So again, you could fit White Light that in the middle of them. Now with that part of it, that's a different story. I actually would recommend you could get Go-Go and get that, I think the 4 volumes of that until the end of that series, and then go from Necessary Evil's starting point and Mighty Morphin, and you would get like this huge continuous saga. And that's how the deluxes are actually releasing that format, that series. And I actually think that's the only thing the deluxes have done right, is they've done it in a sort of order. The thing is like when you read it singly, you get a lot of shocks because you're reading it back and forward and you're looking for answers, but that's impossible to navigate outside of singles. So I think the best way of reading it would be straight. It is a lot of jumping around, but I think by the end of it, it is earned. Like you'll understand why and you'll appreciate why. Again, I think the middle part is awkward because they changed direction on where they wanted to go. They did the 6 issues of Marguerite Bennett and they were like, okay, don't know. And then Ryan Parrott jumped on and does this huge epic, and it's incredible. It is absolutely incredible. It's like that is probably the best comics I've read in the last like 2-3 years. But it is like one big epic. And if you got the order, if you got them, as I say, go to the end, and then the thing is, what helps with that as well is the story is called Necessary Evil, and I believe that all the trades have that on them, so you would know that they're all Necessary Evil. So you could basically bundle them all together. And then, as I say, the beginning of Mighty Morphin and Go-Go actually are bundled together easy as well, because it just depends on how you want to read them. Do you want to read the event as a full event, or do you want to read each aspect of the event kind of like separately? Because you could also, like I've just said with Necessary Evil, you could just read straight through. You would get maybe a couple spoilers here and there, not major ones in Go-Go, but you could just read it right the way through. It's just the middle part that's a bit awkward because there's no way you can really fit that. But overall, you could get a rough straight line of it. You would need a reading order though. And that is the biggest criticism I could give it, is that navigating it could be a bit difficult. And that's why I say, if you want to see if you're interested, start at number 1 of Mighty Morphin and just read the first volume or 2 volumes and see if you like it. And then if you do like it, figure out a timeline order. And if we get enough interest and people do want to read it, I could easily post my timeline order where use, because I have the trades, so I could tell you what order I think would be best to read it in, and you could follow that.
Okay, I mean, that would be helpful because admittedly kind of loses points when you tell me that there's like a lot of jumping around to do.
Yeah.
That's usually, in my experience with reading nearly anything, once I have to jump between books, that's where I start to fall off of certain titles.
Yeah. And I think that Boom have realized that's the biggest mistake they've made, because like the 2 series that are running right now, and their titles are ludicrous, but one's called Mighty Morphin and one's called Power Rangers. They run alongside each other. So you could just read like both volume 1s, both volume 2s, both volume 3s, and it's so much easier to explain. But I really do think there was a big learning curve with them trying to figure out, again, direction and, how to release this. Because from what I believe, the reason that Kyle Higgins left is because he wanted to do stuff that he was being told no. And I think that's because Kyle Higgins' direction was that he wanted to really take advantage of the freedom of being able to do anything, maybe to a point where it was almost too much. Whereas Ryan Parrott is really adhered to like the show, like respected the show, and yet he still managed to flip it completely on its head. But it never feels like it's spitting in the face. It's changing stuff without changing Power Rangers.
Okay.
And I think that was a big learning curve for them, and they've now got it right. But it's that. But I have to make everyone aware that that is a con.
So what I'm gathering is you're saying that like eventually it kind of gets easier to read in a certain order without having to jump around as much. Because like for me, if I go from the trade for one book to the trade for another book, that's not so much of an issue. But when you tell me that I have to read Mighty Morphin issue number 1 and 2, and then I have to read Power Rangers number 1, and then I jump back to Mighty Morphin 3, and then like when
I never think it gets as bad as that. Like, I'm talking trade wise, like maybe some book hopping, but it never gets as bad as you needing to like fit issues into each other. I think the only point you would really need to do that is shattered grid if you were being elitist. But I'd like to also point out that I am probably being elitist about reading order. It really depends on how you feel about it. Like, if you're not caring, then I would probably, like, it's not signposted. You could probably just read Mighty Morphin and read Go-Go. It wouldn't be as fulfilling because it's all over the timeline, but you could, and it would still make rough sense.
So you're saying it's possible for you to just read one series and not the other potentially, and not miss too much?
Yeah, I think you would. I think that you would maybe miss some things, but I think it is possible. It's not. I don't think it's the best way of reading it, but I think it's possible. I mean, plenty of people, I imagine, already do it anyway. But I just think if you really wanted to get the best from the story, it'd be better in a certain order. But that said, like, again, if you're not fussed about a couple spoilers, you could just line up the books. Again, you would need a reading order, but you could just line up the books so you just read them in one big line, basically. But you would need a reading order for it.
Right.
Again, if you didn't fuss, you could just read them flat out. Or if you're only worried about the main series, you could just read the main series up until the two newest ones that run, because they're important to each other.
Okay, so the initial, like, quote unquote main series is Mighty Morphin. Is it just Mighty Morphin, or is it Mighty Morphin Power Rangers? Like
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
Okay, but now is it different, or
is it? This is the other. I guess I could say it's the other con is that their names are too similar. So they started Mighty Morphin and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers and Go-Go Power Rangers. And you can kind of tell, like, they have different sort of styles, and you can kind of tell when you just look at them, you can tell one's the more up to date and one's like the prequel. But now they've split the name, so one title is Mighty Morphin and one title is Power Rangers. The thing with, I think the reason they've done that is because, I mean, if you put it together, it's the full title, but they are two halves to a whole. But again, it is a case of you would just read one trade, then go to the next trade, like, and back and forward. So it'll be like 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, whereas the other ones aren't so much like that. But again, that completely depends on how pernickety you are about things. Like, I'd imagine a Power Rangers fan that's never read a comic before but heard they're good would want to read it in the best order possible. So that would probably be a straight line.
Okay. I mean, yeah. So when you put it that way, it makes it sound a little bit better. It's not like as much as I don't like the whole jumping around thing, like I said, like, that helps.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing I'd like to add, though. See, this whole, because this is the hardest part of this, is like in selling you on this. This is the hardest part. I 100% believe that by the end of it all, I personally believe it's worth it. Like, I genuinely believe by the end of it all, they'll be like, "Damn, that was something else. Like, that was a crazy, like, journey. That was a crazy adventure." Because every aspect of these series gives something worth reading. It's not like, okay, you're jumping around. See, my opinion has always been like, yeah, jumping around's a pain, but if you make it worth it, then it is worth it. Like, if you're reading something and you're getting lost in it, and you're being given something meaty you can bite on, and I think that's the case. Like, if you read Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, you're getting the core story. I've already spoken about that. But if you go back to Go-Go and it's a prequel, people always say the stakes are gone because it's a prequel. Well, not really, because this story, the Go-Go, has characters in it that play a part down the line or disappear, and like it's got its own thing going on. It's not just there to fill a gap. It's got its own storyline, and it's earlier, so you're getting more context to characters, and it maybe be setting something up for the main series that you don't know is coming, and they really do enhance each other. You know, I particularly remember like when I was reading them single issues, I couldn't believe. I remember when they announced Go-Go and thought, why would you do a prequel? Like, why would you go back? I read the first issue and I was like, that was incredible. And each month I would read both issues from each series and I'd be blown away at how good both are, you know? And it just continued and it has never stopped, you know? So all in all, I want to say, like, I do firmly believe it's worth it in the end.
Well, I mean, that obviously, is good to hear. Another question I have for you is, let's say, I mean, since you're selling it to me and potentially anyone else who's interested in watching this video, let's say I start it and I'm not like really digging it. At what point do you think, if you've reached it and you're still not loving it, that you should stop? Like, not like forcibly, but like, it's like, oh, if you've reached this point and you're still not like really into it, then it doesn't like get much better, or it's going to be more of the same, or whatever, however you want to phrase it.
So that's actually a difficult question because I honestly, I think that it continuously gets better. I don't think there's a point that's stoppable. Like, I think that if you stop, you're like, I think Ryan Parrott, what he's doing this very moment is incredible. So if you stop early, you're not going to see any of that. And it's not a pain where it starts amazing and gets worse. I think it's the opposite. I think it starts good and it gets amazing. That said, if we're being like pernickety, I think that probably Shattered Grid would be the best point. So I think that's like maybe 5 volumes of it. I think if you read those 5 volumes and get to the end of Shattered Grid and you're not feeling it, that's probably the point to stop. I definitely think that Marguerite Bennett's part, maybe some people will get a bit like, yeah, that was okay. But that almost makes it even better because when you get into Ryan Parrott stuff, that's so good that the previous one will make it look even more good. So it'll blow your mind even more. But I definitely think Shattered Grid must be read. That's the first event. Kyle Higgins put a lot of effort into it. And if you're also excited for Shattered Grid, I recommend going on YouTube and looking at the live action trailer that he actually directed, and he got Jason David Frank to play a character in it. And it's just a small video, but holy hell did it get me hyped because I couldn't believe they had the audacity to do that. But yeah, I think Shattered Grid is the best point, and I say that for both series. Read Mighty Morphin up to Shattered Grid, and I would read Go-Go. I know that sounds a lot, but both give both give different things in such interesting ways that you might actually find that like Go-Go you prefer over Mighty Morphin, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like I know of a few people that they didn't dislike one of them, but they definitely preferred Go-Go, and that's why Ryan Parrott got it in the end, I think. But Shattered Grid as a whole is such a big event that feels like it's got something different to say, and it's just something that Power Rangers never did before. And the art is phenomenal. There's a 2-page spread in this event that I don't think will ever leave me and I wish I could say what it is, but I'm not. But it's absolutely incredible. And everyone will know it the minute they read it. They'll know exactly what I'm talking about. With that 2-page spread. But yeah, I definitely think Shattered Grid's the point. If you don't like Shattered Grid, then it's probably it's worth stopping. If you like Shattered Grid even a bit, I would keep going.
Okay, so I mean, I get why that would be difficult if you think that the book increasingly gets better on average, at least. It would be kind of hard to pinpoint a good, because like some people will tell you, oh, read the first I don't know, 6 or 12 issues, and if you're not feeling it, then give up. With this one, it sounds a little bit more of a challenge to say, hey, if you're not feeling it, you should stop here.
Yeah, because Kyle Higgins, his Power Rangers run kind of reminds me of Jeff Johns' Green Lantern run. It continuously like builds. So when he does his volume 1, his story, like when his run ends with Shattered Grid, it ends like that's all one story. Okay, there's maybe some filler issues here and there. There's maybe like a one-off like story arc, but it's still feeding the same story that he's done since the start, and it all culminates in Shattered Grid. So that's why I would recommend reading all of that up till Shattered Grid, because you're only seeing the beginning, you're not seeing the middle or end. And I know that maybe some people will say, oh, well, the first trade should have an ending or whatever. But again, that would be like the TV show. And the point was to show that the TV show could be more. And I think that's why he started with a big storyline.
Mm,
You know?
okay.
And then on top of that, like if you like that or you think it's okay or it's good, then I recommend going to Ryan Parrott's Go-Go, because that shows you a different angle. And on top of that, if you like Go-Go, then I 100% would stick around, because that guy's the one that takes over in the long run.
I mean, that makes sense. I think that's a really good point to bring up in case that wasn't already clear.
Yeah. If the main series isn't for you, I still would recommend checking out Go-Go, because yeah, that like the thing is, the stuff in Go-Go actually kind of feeds a lot of Ryan Parrott stuff like right now. So it's not like things will happen and then they're just forgotten about. Things happen, and there's one in particular that's set up in Go. Well, stuff happens in Go-Go. I remember thinking, this is really cool, but what the hell do you do with this? And in the current series right now, and that must have been like 4 years ago, and the stuff that he's doing right now with this plot point, I'm like, every month I'm like, this is so freaking cool. I can't believe that this has come about. Like, I never thought I'd see this, but this has happened. He's managed to pull it off. It feels organic and it's awesome. And it's brought up because so many layers were added in that initial run, like so many like relationships, and like you figured out people's opinions more. When he pulls it back at the end, you're like, oh my god, this is going to cause so much drama. And it does, but it's not like drama you don't want to read. It's like juicy drama. You're like, yes, give me more, and it's ace. And it gets you excited. And then that's not even talking about the Power Ranger side of things. That's talking about like the kids. When you add in the Power Ranger aspect of it, and you got all this action kicking off, and you got the space drama kicking off, and then you've got the dilemma of what's going on with them as teenagers, but then you add superpowers in these suits, then you're just dialing it up to 11, and it's great. So the beginning phase of Power Rangers, all of it is like worth reading. So it's a hard question to answer, to be honest.
Fair enough. Another thing that, like, based on what you're saying, that I'm like realizing is that I think it's, I guess you could say that like it can sometimes be like overlooked or forgotten that the Power Rangers are teenagers, they're high schoolers, they're,
Yeah.
kids, basically,
Yeah.
because when you're, I don't know, 6 years old, watching Mighty Morphin Power Rangers for the first time, like they've got literal adults playing 16-year-olds,
Yeah.
and then you throw in the fact that they already know all these things, they know what they're doing, they've like got
Yeah.
certain things together because the show doesn't develop that aspect of it.
Yeah.
I think it very easily gets overlooked that they're teenagers and have no business doing all these things that they're doing.
Yeah.
So I think having that dynamic that you're describing, where it touches on like their home life, where you actually see their parents and
Yeah.
things like that, I think that's something that interests me personally. Like, I don't care too much about the like slice of life, super character, like interpersonal relationship stuff, generally speaking.
Uh-huh.
But that's not to say that it doesn't interest me, especially like in this capacity when it's something we haven't seen, if
Yeah.
you're just versed in the show.
The thing is, I think on you saying that, I've pushed this like that it's really cool how they've added layers and stuff, but I never actually think it's too much. Like, it's layered and it's deeper. But when I'm saying it's deeper, the show wasn't deep at all. So like there was some layers, but it wasn't overly like it didn't challenge anything. It just kind of went along with the flow.
It's very like, to me, it's very like face value, like surface
Yeah.
level type of stuff. Like, okay, these guys are friends, but none of them are actually really bad at anything outside of like the off chance they get beat up a little bit.
Yeah. So that's the thing. So like with that said, and there's like it's very face value. The comic, when I say it's deeper, it's not gonna make you rethink your life, and it's not gonna like spend 17 issues on a relationship drama. It's not like that. It's not that sort of book. It's not like
It doesn't
Riverdale
define
or
the
something.
genre.
Yeah. It knows what it is. Like as I said, I think the best phrase I could use that I used earlier is it knows what it is and it knows what it's missing. Like it balances it all. And I think that's why I think it's such a good series because it never loses track of what it is. It knows when it needs to be action and it knows when it needs to be drama. And when it is drama, like when it's relationships and all that, it's not like it takes over the book. It's always like a Power Rangers issue, and then this is in there. But over the long run, if once you've read like 40 issues of it, even though it's only done at little bits each issue, that means that when something culminates in like issue 41, you're like, whoa, because it's been built up over this time, but it's still been action packed and it's still like worked on the Power Rangers lore, you know? So like if you don't like that stuff, it's never bogged down by it. I think Go-Go definitely focuses more on not like relationships, but characters being out of costume. Um, there's more background characters in Go-Go, but again, that's all fun because when you know what I know, where it ends up now, it's worth it because it'll blow your freaking mind. You know?
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's all very informative. This isn't a lot of this stuff is stuff that I feel like is new information to me.
Yeah.
Like because we've talked about Power Rangers, on end before.
Uh-huh.
I was just watching one of our other videos where we kind of go off on a little tangent about Power Rangers.
Uh-huh.
So like we've talked about it. So there are certain things that I do already know. But even now, like some of the stuff that you're telling me is either stuff that I forgot or like didn't realize, or is just completely new altogether. So I think this was really good. Um, I am out of questions. So now I will leave the floor open to you if there's anything that you wanted to touch on, but I didn't think of the question, or anything that you think is important to note for anyone who might want to jump into the series.
Mhm.
Now's the time to get it off your chest.
I think I covered everything. The main thing I really wanted to cover was the timeline problem. I think that's the most daunting thing for me in trying to sell it. Um, but it's not like if it was another series and I said, "Oh, the timeline problem," I'd maybe go, "I don't know if this series is good enough to warrant all that effort." This one is like this one hands down is worth the effort. Um, and I just think like nowadays as well, we get a lot of comic books that are quite, we get dark comic books quite a lot, and like I just appreciate that this one can be darker, but it is also like exciting and fun. Like there's still a lot of fun to be had in it. Um, and I really would hope that people that have overlooked it because of the show give it a chance. Because I mean, it's obviously done well enough that it's slow going. Like Boom Studios clearly and Hasbro clearly have seen enough sales in it that it's still going. Um,
Yeah, because I mean, it's been how many years now? I'm honestly like shocked that it's lasted this long. Like I thought that the Mighty Morphin thing would eventually like fizzle out a little bit
I mean, I'm not
after
sure when it
a handful of
started.
arcs.
Yeah, I'm not sure when it started. It was definitely before the movie. Maybe like 2017. No, it would have been 2016. 2016, I think it started.
No, I don't. I would have thought that it was older than that. That's interesting. But I mean,
No,
that's
because Go-Go 100% started roughly 2017. So maybe Power Rangers started because Go-Go started a little bit after Power Rangers. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So maybe it might have been the tail end of 2015, but it
Okay.
wouldn't have been any older than 2015.
Okay.
Just saying that, like we're in 2022, so that's like 7 years. You know?
I do have to remind myself sometimes that like 2015 isn't like 2 years ago anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
Years ago.
So I don't know
So,
if it's 7 years, but at the very least, it's 6 years. You know, that's not like if
right.
you told me 10 years ago that Power Rangers was going to get a comic book and it was going to be ongoing for at the very least 6 years, I would have slapped you in the face, like, and you know, I would have bit your hand off for it. And the fact that it's good as well, like, again, Power Ranger comics used to be just like these ridiculously cheesy, like kids comic books, but like to be here now and almost feel like I'm taking it for granted that it's a good book feels criminal because it shouldn't be a good book and it is, you know. Um, so I just like really would hope that people that have overlooked it because of the show just give it a shot. Like I really do think it's worth it. And I think I've said plenty of times, like it's definitely always up there for like my pick of the week. And that's been the case since the beginning. That's not just happening right now. That's been the case like all the way back since the very first issue of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. I remember being super excited when the first issue of Shattered Grid came out. They were polybagged. And I actually remember they did I think it was Comic-Con, San Diego Comic-Con, but I'm not sure. They did a panel for Power Rangers. And what they did was they hid them, but they told everyone in the crowd, like Higgins and that told everyone in the crowd that an underneath their chair was an issue of Shattered Grid #1, and it was polybagged, and he wanted everyone to open it, and he wanted them to read it then and there. And in that panel, they took 20 minutes to read it. And then after that, he had some of the people come up and spoiler free give their reactions. And I think that was genius because they were like, what, like because it ends on a cliffhanger, and I'm not going to tell you what the cliffhanger is, obviously, but it ended on a note that was shocking. When I read it, I was like, wait, what? But that was that, and then that fed through that panel, and then I think that must have been like that was the weekend before the Wednesday it came out. So by the Wednesday, I was like straight into that shop to get it because I wanted to know what the hell they just read, you know? And it was genius and it was exciting and it was that sort of stuff I love. And that shows how exciting it was. That a whole room at Comic-Con like freaked out over this one issue. And I guarantee they wouldn't have all been Power Ranger fans either.
Right. I mean, yeah, and some of them probably weren't even reading
Yeah.
Power Rangers at all. And
Yeah, that's exactly it. And like that panel. I mean, I saw a couple of videos of it, but I was reading the live text of it, and even just reading the text of it, I was like, "What's going on? Somebody say something!" You know, like load up and tell me what you've read, or give me your reaction. Is it good? You know, and like, yeah, it's always something I remember fondly and think, "Oh man, that was fun." And you tie that in with the live action video, which do you know what? I'll post the live action after this video goes live. I'll post the live action trailer they did for Shattered Grid on the Cupcakes YouTube channel. So if you follow and like that on Facebook, I'll post that on there so you can all have a look at it.
That would be awesome. We haven't plugged the Facebook channel yet.
Yeah. Because the thing is, as well, is what's really cool about that video is Kyle Higgins actually directs it.
Right.
Because Kyle Higgins originally wanted to make movies. He was a scriptwriter, but he also wanted to be a director. And he fell in, well, to make it sound like he's dropping down, he fell into comics and he ended up writing comics. But he still wants to be a filmmaker and stuff. I see that in his Substack. But he had hoped he was gonna that mini advert was gonna lead to a TV show. And it nearly did, but then I think Saban got involved. But Hasbro own it now, so I think if Hasbro had it at the time, we would have got a TV show based on what that advert was. And it's just such a shame because for such a small advert, it kicks ass.
And so I think I think that's another thing to me that's kind of like viewed as a plus, I guess, or another like selling point is when you've got somebody like, yeah, okay, he kind of wanted to make movies too, but like even ignoring that, the fact that he directed like this advertisement and was
Yeah.
like putting all this extra effort into
Yeah.
his book, I
Yeah.
think speaks about the level of passion that he had for it.
Yeah.
And anybody that is passionate about something is going to be doing some of their best work. And I'm not saying that their best work is automatically going to be great,
Yeah.
but like anybody who's invested into what they're working on, I think makes the book better right off the bat for that reason.
Yeah. And I think, speaking about that advert specifically as well, it was really awesome that you got Jason David Frank back to be in it. I mean, you'll see it when I post the trailer if you want to watch it or not. But Jason David Frank, who played Tommy Oliver in the original Mighty Morphin, is back in that trailer. And like, that is really awesome because Jason David Frank is a huge advocate for the show. I mean, the guy never sleeps, regardless of people's opinion on him. He's literally at every convention imaginable, and he's always signing everything he possibly can, taking photos with as many people as he possibly can. I seen a kid go up to him the other day in a Green Ranger costume, and he was blimmin' doing like fighting moves with him and stuff, and taking photos and videos and that. Like, he's a huge advocate for the franchise, and he's very protective of it. And the fact that Kyle Higgins went in and got him to do that with him was just really cool, and shows that like the level of respect that I think that's why another reason why the comic's so good, that everyone, as much as Kyle Higgins left it, I think because he wanted to do more, they've all respected it. It's not like ever been more like molded to be something completely new. As interesting and dynamic as it is, it's still Power Rangers, but just in a refreshing way, you know?
Yeah. So I did have one more question. It's the closest I think that we will get to a spoiler.
Okay.
I don't think it's very big, but I mean, like it doesn't feel like a spoiler without the context of the book, but maybe if you start reading it, it could be. But I'm going to ask it anyway. I have, watched multiple Power Ranger series, probably like most people who grew up around that time did anyway. Do other Power Rangers show up from like other series? I guess would be the right way to word that at any point. Like, or are there like references or anything like that? Is it always about Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, or do other Power Rangers that we've seen before show up?
I don't think it's overall really like a massive spoiler, but yes, other Rangers do show up.
Okay, and you don't have to tell us which ones.
No,
Like,
I won't.
again,
I think that's the con of Marguerite Bennett's one, is that's probably predominantly where, but I won't say why. You'll understand when you get to that point. But no, other Rangers do show up, but not in ways you would expect, and it's not for a while. Like, it's very much, and even it is always up till now, it's always been a Mighty Morphin series.
Okay.
It's more like, do you know what? If I could compare it to anything, I feel like it's very No Way Home-esque.
Okay.
It's not done for the sake of it. Like, there's reasons.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Interesting. Well, that's good to know. So my last question, slightly unrelated to selling me on the book.
Okay.
It's a two-parter. Anyone who's been watching these videos like actively, like the Wednesday Warrior ones and all that, any of the videos with me, know that I fucking love Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And Power Rangers did a crossover book with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Have you read that book?
Yes, I have.
Do I need to read any other Power Rangers material to read that crossover?
You actually don't. You don't need to read anything.
Okay. Do you think that book by itself, like that crossover, could like whet somebody's appetite for more Power Rangers books?
I definitely think so. I think because Ryan Parrott writes that.
Oh, does he? Okay, I wasn't sure if he did or not.
So it very much is in keeping with his style. So if you like that style, I think that it's more face value than his actual Power Rangers work, but there's still like it's crazy, like fan servicey in a good way. Like there's the stuff that you want to happen will happen in it, but the art is phenomenal, and I definitely think that if you read it and you love it, even to be fair, even if you like it, yeah, I definitely think you should try Power Rangers. I actually think that would be a good gateway. Um,
Okay.
it does. It is a bit weird because it feels like everything fits, and then that one doesn't really, because it feels like a story arc. It's probably the thing that's closest to the show in the sense that it's like sometimes in the show you would just get like the arc would be over, and then just a new two-parter would happen, but it doesn't really affect anything. It's good, and the characters are in it, like that are in it, are like layered enough in the actual, but it's very fan servicey, but in a good way, and it's a heck of a lot of fun, and the art is really good.
Okay. Because I've been meaning to get that book because, like I said, I love the Turtles and like I grew up with Power Rangers, and like there was that crossover episode that they did. Uh,
Yeah,
so like the idea of them doing a crossover comic always appealed to me, and the fact that it actually like happened blows my mind.
yeah.
Um, so I have been meaning to read that book. I want to say that I might have the singles for it, but
Yeah,
because it's been a couple of years and I wasn't actively collecting, but my shop was still shipping me books.
yeah.
I might actually have the singles, so maybe I'll just read it that way.
I
But
have this. I have the singles of the turtles holding the helmet.
oh, what the damn it!
Do you know what? This actually ties into something we were saying earlier, right? But another series that is worth reading, but it is very face value, and actually, I don't think it reads like him at all. There is a Justice League Power Rangers crossover,
Oh, there is. I forgot about that.
and it was Tom Taylor that wrote that.
Oh wow.
And it's very that one is in particular face like fan servicey face value, like there is not much depth to that whatsoever. um it is just like what you would expect, the Justice League and Power Rangers coming together. It's fun, and that's really it in the grand scheme of everything they've released Power Ranger wise. I remember being so hyped for that, and that's probably the one I've thought about least, um, which is a shame. But it's probably, if you're reading everything, it's still worth a read. It's interesting because I think it does tease like another one, but they've never done it, and I don't know if that's because it didn't do well enough. Um, but like Ninja Turtles and Power Rangers is a completely different story. Like that's nothing like um Justice League, Power Rangers. Again, I think that was maybe in the early days when they were trying to figure out what to do with it and how to navigate it. And I mean, getting Tom Taylor was like a coup, but a coup. But but I don't know if, because Tom Taylor's not really part of that universe, if it was just a bit like unsure about how to slot it in, because Kyle Higgins was writing the series at that point. So that might be why. Because obviously, if Ryan Parrott writes Ninja Turtles, because he's writing the main series, he knows how to like kind of figure that out, what you
Right.
can do and what you
Okay.
can't do.
That makes sense. So, all right. So, I mean, with all that said, I think we can kind of like wind this thing down a little bit, wrap up.
Yeah,
So I guess some of the takeaways from this so far is that you suggest or recommend, I should say, that you try to find a reading order if you want to get into the series. And then one of the other big takeaways is fuck those deluxe editions. They might look pretty, but they don't have everything that you need.
absolutely.
I think those are the two biggest pieces of advice that you've
Yeah.
given us.
I mean, for the deluxe editions to matter, I think that you would probably need the trades, and then you could actually skip certain trades and get the deluxe editions for like the bigger like events, or you could say. But that would just look really unappealing on your shelf.
Right.
Um, so because I do think there's like one free comic book day special that's included in the deluxe editions that you don't get in the trades, but it's not something that's big enough that would affect the whole thing. I think it's a really stupid decision anyway. Um, but I just don't think the trades are worth it. I just think it doesn't give you
Oh, you mean the deluxes, not the trades,
the
right?
deluxe. Sorry, I don't think the deluxes are worth it. I just think they missed far too much out. And the thing is I if you're collecting the deluxes, I just can't fathom someone going, "I'm going to collect the trades as well." Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
Oh,
I just
absolutely. I couldn't
you
do
know
it.
because
Ignoring like the paperback thing, I couldn't
yeah,
mismatch those formats and then like
because the
still
thing
try
is
to display them next to each other.
yeah, because the thing is, if you get the deluxe edition, so you're gonna get, say, you got deluxe editions 1 to 3, that covers Mighty Morphin up to Shattered Grid, but the third deluxe edition includes the issues from Go Go that are to do with Shattered Grid. So you would then need to buy the trades for Go Go 1 and 2, and then
Right.
just skip 3 because that's in the deluxe. It's
And
just
yeah, that's
stupidly
confusing.
handled.
It's not as you've said before, it's poorly mapped.
Yeah. And then you go back into the deluxes, and it again just goes to Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And then when you go to the one recently released, you go to the Necessary Evil deluxes. They've got Go Go back in them, but they've missed again another like 7 issues. So it's just ridiculously stupid.
Okay.
And the
Well,
thing, and the thing with that as well is like they're missing these issues from Go Go, and the writer who's writing it right now wrote those. So it's like, why are they not important enough to get a deluxe edition? Because you've given the writer that job. Do you know what I
right.
mean? So the deluxes are just an absolute no go.
Maybe maybe they'll get their shit together and they'll kind of like redo them.
I hope so, but they did that Kickstarter, and that a lot of people were some people were complaining about them using Kickstarter. So a lot of people were rejoicing because they were getting so many deluxes and they were looking cool. I didn't like it because it just solidified that these deluxes were just going to have Mighty Morphin with occasional other things, and it just wasn't going to really fit. Because, like, even if they fix it for like the Mighty Morphin and the Power Ranger series that's going right now, you're still always going to miss those Go Go's. So it doesn't really work.
Gotcha. So yeah, fuck the deluxes. That's the
Yeah.
biggest takeaway. Don't bother with them, even though they look pretty. Um, and try to find a reading order if you are really committed, which is something that I would probably do. I'm not. I'm going to mull this over now that we've talked about it. I'm not going to confirm one way or the other if you've sold me or not.
Damn it!
Uh,
I'm not going to sleep now.
um, but yeah, so if I do get into it, I definitely think that getting a reading order is the best way to go. That's the way that I try to like enjoy it. So if that's something that you're into also, by all means do that with this series. Um,
Thing is, let us know on Facebook and stuff because, like, I'm obviously like this. So if anyone wants to engage about this or ask any questions, comment on the video or just post on Facebook. You know,
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I've said it before, Connor said it before. Join the Facebook group because that is one of the best ways to reach out to us. I mean, we are on Instagram and Twitter as well, but as far as talking comics or asking questions, bringing things up, Facebook is probably the best way to reach out to us. So join the Facebook group, Cupcakes Comic Reviews, and let us know what you think about this series if you've already read it or if this video helped you kind of decide one way or the other whether or not you want to get into Power Rangers. Because the biggest thing for me, I was always on the fence about this series because like I like Power Rangers as a kid, uh, and like even like into my teens a little bit. I like Power Rangers, but there's something about the IP being printed in like a comic book medium didn't really appeal to me, and I couldn't even tell you why. It was just like I think, with the exception of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, even though technically it was originally a comic, the idea of different IPs, whether it be like video games, movies, TV shows, uh, action figure line. in the case of like Transformers and things like that. Like IPs being reused never really appealed to me as far as being in comic books. I'd rather read comic book original material, because like the gloves are off essentially, in the sense that it's original to this comic. You don't have to honor any sort of products, like how Connor was saying with this series. Like, they are faithful to the show if you love that, but it kind of does its own thing. Like, the gloves are off essentially, like they have free reign. So seeing that they do something like that here is a huge positive to me. I've already said that, but like thinking about it more, I love the idea of them kind of like steering their own ship essentially, instead of being like held down by what's expected of like typical Power Rangers stuff in this situation. So yeah, I'm this video, this discussion, I think has helped me kind of form, at the very least, a more informed opinion about whether or not I want to start reading Power Rangers. So thank you, Connor. I appreciate you having you here. I'm glad you're well. I'm glad to have you back. Thanks for taking the time to do this with me.
That's all right. I just want to say quickly, I have this guy sitting next to me this whole time. I want to show him off quickly. He's not finished yet. That's the Megazord.
That thing is so cool.
It is. It's not finished yet. I just want to give my friend a shout out. Connor Gibson. He's on Instagram as pure painting. He's not finished them, but he's great and he posts paints all the time. So if you're into that stuff like miniatures and that, give it a look. But yeah, this is sick. He's done such a good job of it so far. Even done a road, like a pavement.
That's so cool.
So yeah, I thought I'd just show him because he's been sitting on my shoulder the whole time. Just surveying, making sure I say the right things. He's threatening.
Make sure you don't cross the line. It's fantastic.
I felt him with the timeline question. I felt him like looking at me.
Oh, that's great. So yeah, with that said, make sure to like and comment, subscribe, do all these things that I almost never plug. But do it. Hit the notification bell. We post videos on like a weekly basis at the very least. We're always doing pull lists, as you know. We've got some other Cupcakes that do their own take on it as well. So yeah, hit the notification bell. This way you see when we get new videos. Follow us on Twitter and on Instagram. I'll put those handles in the description. And I think that's it. So
read Power Rangers.
Final thoughts. Read Power Rangers.
Fucking read Power Rangers. I'm threatening though.
I love it. I love how committed you are to this. I think the other thing that's like helping sell me on the series is like hearing you like gush about it.
Yeah.
So I'm leaning towards getting it. If I have to give you an answer right now, I'm leaning towards getting it. Still on the fence, but I think you did your job.
Awesome.
So hopefully other people can watch this, make an informed decision. Because I mean, who doesn't like Power Rangers? You know,
who doesn't like multicolored teenagers with attitude?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
It was him that told me to say that.
So with that said, we're gonna sign off, and we'll see you guys later. Peace.